Hello everybody, so in today's video we are going to create a React Native feed kind of similar to Instagram, and in this feed we will have a lot of cool functionalities like pull to refresh, infinite scrolling, so as long as you keep reaching the bottom of the screen the app will load more items. We will also add some like functionalities, so you will click the heart button or just double tap the image and a nice animation will be displayed. And the data for each of these posts, as you can see here in our Figma model, will come from this API, which is a free API called dummyapi.io. As you can see here, they provide a lot of different endpoints with different data. In our video, we will use the posts endpoint. You can see here a representation of the data. So it will be an array, and each of these items represents a post. So you have the ID, the image, the text, the published date, and so on. So that's basically it. So let's get to it. Just one thing, in order to get access to the dummy API you need to sign in, and they will provide you with a token so you can make your requests. Okay, so I just created a React Native project. As you can see here, it's the default project. So let's start working. The first thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna create a source folder. Let's move our app here, and now we have an error. Let's fix this. Okay, now the error goes away. Let's create some folders here. The first one will be screens, where we will put our screens, and of course a components folder. Okay, we can just get rid of all of this code here. Let's start from scratch. So okay, now we don't have anything here. So let's take a look at our layout. So we will have a list, and each item of the list will be one of these posts with a header, the user profile, the post image. We'll add the quantity of likes and also the description. So let's divide all of these in components. So first I'm gonna create the home screen. Let's call it home. Okay, let's just add some random text here. Oops. Okay, let's call it home just for markup. Okay, so now let's just import our home screen. Okay, let's display it here. Okay, as you can see here, we have our text. So the first thing you may notice is our status bar has a nice purple here. So let's add that. So I'm gonna wrap everything in a safe area view, and inside of it we'll have our home component and then our status bar. Okay, so now we can add some nice color with the background color prop. Let's see which color is this. Okay, and now as our status bar is purple, let's make our text white. We have an error here. Let's see what it is. Oh, okay, didn't pass the hats. Okay, Now we have our purple status bar. Now let's go to our home screen. Here we will have the wrapper for our list. In order to style our components, I will be using a library called styled components. So let's import that. Here I'm gonna add a styles.js file which will hold our styles. Okay, so our component will have a height of 100%. The background color will be something like, okay, let's center everything. Okay, now let's import our container. Okay, here it is. So now we need our list, and in order to have our list, we first need to get the items from the API. So let's make a request to the dummy API. Let's call this function getPosts. Okay, we'll use the fetch API for that. So let me just copy the URL. Let's say page 1. Okay. Here we have our options for the request. We need to pass the headers. As you can see in the docs, you have to pass a header called app ID along with your token. So let's do that. Something wrong here. Oh, of course. So now we have our getPost function. So whenever this returns something, let's convert it to JSON. And then let's just log it. If we get any errors, let's just log it for now. Okay, so now we have our function to get posts from the API. What we need to do now is to get these posts and then display the results in a list. But first, let's see if this function is working. So I'm gonna use a use effect here. So whenever this screen is rendered, I will execute this function here. For now, let's just call getPosts. Okay, as you can see here in the console, I'm getting some results. Of course, I can read this right now, but it's the same results we're getting here, so basically the same structure. So okay, we have the results. So now let's move on to our FlatList component. The FlatList component is the way React Native provides us to display lists. If you want, you can take a look at the documentation. I'll leave the link below. The basics are pretty simple actually, so let's get to it. First of all, when I get these results, I want to save this in a state. So let's create a state. I'm gonna call it posts. Okay, I'm gonna initialize it as null. As an empty array. And then when I get some response, I want to set it on my state. So I'm gonna use set posts, and I'm gonna response.data. Okay, so whenever I fetch the data, I'll save this to this state. Now I want to display these items on a list. So for that, as I said, I'm gonna use FlatList. So now that we have our posts, we need to display them on our FlatList. Let's do that. Let's import the FlatList component, and it will receive some props. You can take a look at the full documentation on the reactnative.dev. So we're gonna pass a prop called data, which will be our data array, which is posts. Also the key extractor, which is basically an ID. So we will receive our post item, and then we'll return something. If we take a look here, each item of the post has an ID. So let's use this as an identifier for each of the FlatList items. We can just say post.id or just the structure, the ID here. So okay, we have our key extractor. Now we need to provide the item to be rendered. We do this using the render item prop. This will receive a function and return a prop. For now, let's say it will display a text. Okay, and here in our function we will receive each of the items of the data array. We will receive it like this. We need to destructure and get the item prop. We can just rename it and call it post, and then let's display some nice text. So as we can see here, we can just, I don't know, just display the ID. Let's do that for now. So I'm gonna call it post.id. Okay, so as you can see here, I have a list of IDs, but that's not what I want. What I want is a list of post items. So okay, it's a good start. So now what we need to do is create our post component. Let's do it right now. Let's create a post index file. Okay, let's initialize it. Okay, so if I take a look here, I have a post item which is composed by a header, post image, and a footer which has a nice button and the username, the description, and so on. So I'm thinking let's divide this in 3 parts. So the first one will be the header along with the picture and the username, and then we will have the post image, and last but not least we will have our buttons and text and so on. So okay, let's do this. Okay, so here let me add a styles.js for our styles. Okay, in our container, let's say it has a black background. Let's import it here. And also we'll add the image first. So let's say we will have an image wrapper, which will be a view to hold our image. Okay, and then we'll have our image. Let's call it post image. Okay, let's import this. Let's add our image wrapper, and inside of it our image. Oops, post image. Okay. Now I'm going to import our component. And instead of the text, let's use the post component. But now I need to pass our post item here as a prop. Let's say it's called post. Okay. So now we need to get the data here. So we will do this by destructuring our props and getting the post here. We can see that we get an error. That's because this value is declared but it's not used, and we do not have a prop validation for it. So we're not going to waste our time here defining our props because it's not the point of the video. So let's just disable this rule in the ESLint. Okay, now we need to get our data from the post. So each post will be some structure like this. Okay, so the first property I'll need to use here is the image. So let's get that. So I'm gonna destructure this post and get the image. So now in our image, let's use the source prop, and its URI will be our image. Oops, let me wrap this in curly braces. Okay. So here we can't see our items just yet. Let's see what's going on here. Okay, so let's get back to our styles and let's add some modifications here. So first of all, I'm gonna say the height of the items will be 400 pixels, and let's say the height of the post image will be 100%. We still can see the list, so let's see what's going on. Okay, let's add some styles to our list. I'm gonna call it list. Let's say its width is 100%. Now I just need to import it here, and instead of FlatList, let's use this list. Okay. Now we can see our image here. That's cool. We have one part down. So now let's start building our header. Like you can see here, we have our image and then we have our header. Okay. So let's get to it. Now I'm gonna create, let's just call post header. Okay, let's initialize it as we did before. Let's create a styles.js file like we did before. Let me expand this here. Okay, we'll have a container. We also need to have an image and a username. So let's create these components here. Let's call user image. We also need a wrapper like we did before for the post image. let's say it's a view for now. And finally, the username. This will be a text. Okay, now let's import our components. We have the container, the user image wrapper, and the username. All right. Now we'll have our container and then our user image wrapper, inside of it our user image, and then our user name. Let's say just test for now. Okay, I'm gonna import that here. Post header. Okay, and let's add it here. Alright, you can see we have a div here. The first step we need to do here is to pass the user data to our post header component. So as you can see here, all data related to the user is inside this owner property. So we need to destructure the owner property. Let's say we're gonna pass user data. Okay, and here we need to get the data. So we'll have our user data here, and from the user data we need the first name, last name, and the user picture. Okay, so let's destructure here. So last name, first name, and picture. I can add, let's say it will be first name along with the last name. Okay, so let's just add some color to our text in order to see it. Let's say, let's say it will be white. Okay, I'm gonna say its font size will be 14 pixels and font weight bold. Alright, so now let's style our container. I'm gonna say this will have some padding, let's say 12 pixels and 15 pixels. Okay, that's good. Now we need to do something that's kind of tricky. As you can see here, we have a gradient border on our user image. So in order to emulate this effect, we need to use a library called linear gradient. React Native. Okay, so this is a library we need to use. So let's do that. Let's install this library. Okay, and now let's import it here in our styles. Okay, and now instead of the view, let's style our linear gradient, and in here we will add some attributes. You can see all of these in the docs. You can see in more details. As you can see, we can pass a colors prop, which is an array of colors, and this will form the gradient for us. So let's do that. So let's use the style components way to do that. We can use the attributes, as you can see here. and pass an object to it. So anything you normally would pass to a component like this, color or any type of prop, you can do just this and pass it here. So imagine that I'm passing a prop to this component called color. I can just pass it directly here on my component. Okay, so I'm gonna pass an array of colors, as you can see here in the docs, but I'm gonna pass it directly in my style component. So sure, we have an error here because I don't have any colors. I have these colors set here. I copied all the colors so we don't waste our time here. So let's add some height, let's say 40 pixels, and width 40 pixels. Let's center all of its children, so let's say justify content, center, align items also to the center. Let's add some border radius, let's say 25 pixels. I think that's good. Okay. We still are seeing this error here. Let me rebuild the project. Oh, okay. I need to pass colors. Alright. So as you can see, we have a gradient div here. So what we'll do here is to place our image inside of this div. So we will have the linear border effect. So we already have our image here. So all I need to do is to pass the source prop and the URI. Okay. Now I need to set the dimensions for my image. Let's say width 32 pixels and height 32 pixels. Let's also add some border radius, 25 pixels. Okay, as you can see here, we have our image. I think this border is a little bit thick. Let's decrease our height here. Let's say maybe 37. Okay, I think this is better. Now in our container, let's say its flex direction is row. Okay, and now let's align our items. Good. Okay, so just one thing, let's apply some margin here to the right. Let's say 10 pixels should be enough. Okay, so now we have our user picture along with the gradient border. I think we can actually say it's a little bit thinner. Okay, it's good enough. Now we need to create our footer, and as you can see here, we'll have a like button, a nice line to separate our content, and then our like count, our user name, and the post description. So let's do it. Let's just scratch this. Okay, let me close all of these. Okay, so now we need to create our post footer. Okay, let's initialize it. Create a styles.js file. Okay. Now we need to import our footer component. Okay, and let's add it here. Oops. Okay. So as of now, we don't have anything here, so let's work on that. We need some styles here. So first of all, let's import our container. We need to add a button row. Okay, let me just copy it, and then we need to have a separator. And then let's add a row for the likes and the username. Okay, I think this should be enough. So let's first of all add the icon, and for that we will use a library called React Native Vector Icons. Oops. Okay, so this is the library. You can use a lot of different icons with this. You can see here the install instructions. So let's get started. So first of all, let's add the dependency. Okay, and then we have specific steps, both for iOS and Android. I'm gonna do the Android part of the process as I'm not in macOS right now. So we need to go to android/app/build.gradle and add this. So let's do it. Android app build.gradle. So let's add this here. And then we need to say which of these sources we'll use. In our case, I'm gonna use font awesome 5. So let me just copy this and go back to OK. So let's say font awesome. Okay. All right. Now we need to rebuild our project. Let's do that. Okay, so now let's just import our button row from our styles and import icon from vector icons /font awesome. Okay, so inside of our container, let's add our buttons row and then our icon. Let's say its size will be 24 pixels. The name of the icon, you can just go to the Font Awesome website and take a look at all of the available icons here. Okay, so in our case, I'm pretty sure it's heart. All right. Okay, so let's go back. So let's say its name is heart, and its color, let's say it's white for now. Okay, so now we can see our heart icon here. So we need to style our row a little bit, so let's do that. So after the icon we have a separator. Let's import it here. Okay, and let's style our separator. So let's get our color here, and let's say its height will be 1 pixel and its width 100%. Let's add the background color we got from Figma. Okay, now we need some margin, so let's add a 5 pixels margin at the top and at the bottom. So in our container, let's add some padding here. Let's say 10 pixels. Okay, that's better. Okay, now let's add our username. Okay, so for this, its color will be white. Font weight, font size 14 pixels, font weight bold, and let's add some margin to the right, because after this we need to have our text. Let's say 10 pixels. Okay, now we need to create our post text. This will be basically the same thing. Okay, so what I'm gonna do here is I'm going to use our previous style to avoid repeating stuff. Okay, let's say 5 pixels. Okay, that's good. Now let's import our role, our post text, and our username. Let's add our role. Let's say post text, and inside of it we will have some post, and in here we'll have our username. Okay, so why am I doing this? Because I have my post text and I want my username to be part of it, but my username has some bold property, so that's why I'm wrapping this inside of my post text. Now that I think about it, this won't work, so let's just add some space in our text. It's a little hacky, but it's good enough. Okay, so now we have our username and our post text, but everything here is static, so we need to get the data from our post. And if we go back to the JSON structure, this is the data we need. So in here, instead of destructuring, we will just pass the post prop along. Okay, so here let's get our post, And as we did before, let's destructure it, and we need the owner, we need the text, and we need the likes. Okay, so let's get owner, let's call it user, and text and likes. Okay, so for now, let me move these here, and from the owner I can just again destructure. I think this is enough, so we're gonna do the same thing we did on the header. So we'll have first name and last name. Actually, let's do it like this. Let's use the lowercase and then last name to lowercase. Okay, so now we can see the user name here along with the post description. It's nice. Now we have to add the likes quantity here. As we can see here, we have a little heart icon along with the likes quantity. So I'm gonna add another row here, and let me just copy this. Okay, let's change to 12 pixels. The icon's the same. Let's change the color. Let me get this here. Okay, now let's create another component here. Let's call it likes text. Okay, this will be a text. I'm gonna say the color is the same as here. Let's say it has font weight bold. Its font size will be 12 pixels. And okay, now let's import our likes text and use it here. So in here we'll have the likes property and the text likes. Okay, just one small thing. Let's change our role component. Let's say its flex direction is role, and let's align it to the center. Okay, here in our likes text, let's add some margin left to add some space. Okay, that's better. Now we can see our app starting to take form. Okay, so now we have a list of items. We have our post image, we have our header and our footer. So now we need to implement the infinite scrolling functionality. So as long as I get to the bottom, our app will load more items. So to do that, let's get back to our home component. Let me just close everything here. Okay, let's go to the home component. I no longer need this here. Okay, now we want to implement the infinite scrolling, and for that we need to use a functionality in our FlatList which is called on and reached. So whenever I reach the end of my list, I can trigger a function here. So I'm gonna call this function load more items. Okay, so whenever I reach the end of the list, I call load more items. So first of all, if you take a look at our JSON response, we have the total number of items available. So we have our current page, we have our page limit and the offset. So what I'm gonna do is to store this data in a state. I'm gonna call it pager, and I'm gonna initialize it as current 0 and total 1. But as soon as we get the data from getPosts, we will change that. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna remove the data portion of the response, and I'm gonna set pager response. Now I should have the pager, so let's see if this is working. Here I need to have the total amount of pages, and for that we need to do some calculations. So first I need the total pages, so I'm gonna get this data from our pager state. I'm gonna get page, which I'm gonna call current page, and total, which I'm gonna call total items. And now I'm gonna do some calculation. I'm gonna divide total items by the limit, which I need to get from here, and then minus 1. So I will round this in order to get the total pages, and I'm gonna say the next page will be current page plus 1. So I scroll to the bottom and I fire this function, and I have the current page, the total items, and the limit. So now I can get the total pages from this, and I know the next page is the current page plus 1. So if I'm at page 1, next page is 2, so 1 plus 1 equals 2. So let's just see if this works. Let's say total pages. Okay. All right. So you can see here it displays 88 pages. So I have the total pages here. So what I need to do now is to call the getPosts. So if I do this the way I'm doing here, this is not gonna work, because I need to append the new data into the list. So I'm gonna add here another state called isLoading, so I can determine when the application is fetching new data. Let's initialize it as false. Okay, so whenever I start to get more posts, I set isLoading to true. And whenever I'm done and get the data, I set isLoading to false. Or if I catch some error, I'll also set it to false. What we need to do now, instead of just setting the data, I need to destructure my current array of data, which is in my state, and then append the new data, also destructuring. Okay, so let me remove this. Now when I get to the end of the bottom, it will load more items. So we have one problem here. It keeps saying 2 children with the same key. That's expected because we're not moving to the next page just yet. So for this, we're gonna check something here. So if current page is less than total pages, and I'm not loading items right now, I'll get posts, and I need to tell the get posts function to go to the next page. So I'm gonna pass the next page here, and here I'll have an optional argument which will be page, and I'm gonna replace this number here with my page. Okay, so I'm gonna start all over. Okay, so now when I get to the bottom, you can see that I'm loading more items. Okay, but it's not so cool yet because I don't have any feedback when the app's loading. So I'm gonna create another component here. Let's call it loader. Oops. Okay. And now the styles.js. It's gonna be a simple component. We'll have our container, and then we'll use the activity indicator from React Native. Okay, you don't need the view here. Let's say its size is large and its color, this will be the same as the status bar. Okay, let's just make sure it will be aligned to the center and justify to the center. Okay, so this is our loader component. So now I can just import a loader from components. Okay. And now let me close that. Now I need to check if I'm loading more items. So in here, if is loading, I'll just have my loader. If not, I'll have my list. So let's restart the app. Okay, so if I load more items, as you can see, I have my loader. So this is not quite good yet. What we can do is add another check here, and if posts.length equals 0, which means this will be the first time we're loading, we will display the centered loader. If not, we'll display a loader at the footer. So we can do this by setting the list footer component. Now we can just check if is loading, and posts.length is greater than 0, then we return our loader. Okay, so now when I open the app, it will display the centered loader, and when I reach the bottom, it will display another loader, but now on the bottom. Okay, this is cool. Now I'm loading more items as I reach the bottom, but there are some things we can still do here. We can now add the pull to refresh functionality, which is triggered whenever I pull down my list. So for this, I need another state. Now let's call it is refreshing. Okay, so I'm gonna do this right here. We have a on refresh prop, which will receive a function, and this function will be get posts. But now we have a problem because I need to tell get posts that this will refresh the list. Instead of just appending new data, it will clear the list and then appending the data. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna set the page to 0 and then pass another property which will be refreshing. So whenever I'm refreshing, I'm gonna pass it here a refreshing property. So now I need to check here, because if I'm refreshing, I'm gonna set the is refreshing to true, else I'm gonna be setting the set is loading to true. Okay, we have an error here because it's asking for the refresh property, which will be our is refreshing. Oops, it's misspelled refreshing. Okay, so now I need to check here, and when I get the response I also need to check, because if I'm refreshing, what I'm gonna do is set is refreshing to false and set posts response.data. Else I'll do whatever I was doing before. Okay, so now on our catch I also need to set is refreshing as false. And now in our load more items, I need to check if this is refreshing, because I don't need this to trigger when our list is refreshing. Okay, another thing we might want to do is check if posts.length equals 0 before we get the post for the first time, because this will trigger on the first render, and we just want it to trigger when this is equals 0, which means that posts list is empty. Okay, oops, not this one. Another thing we can add here is a list item separator, which will be a component that will separate our list items, as the name says. So let's create this component here. This will be a view. Let's say its height is 15 pixels and its width will be 100%. Okay, let's import it here. Oops. Okay, and now we just need to pass item separator component. Okay, so as you can see here, we have a separator. Alright, that's cool. Now we can just move on to, I think, the last part of the tutorial, and this will be the like functionality. So whenever the user touches our heart icon or just double taps the image, we want to show a cool animation, and to do that we'll use Lottie React Native. So if you don't know Lottie, this is a animation library from Airbnb. So as you can see here, they provide us with a lot of cool animations. So we'll use the Lottie React Native. So here it is. I'm gonna install it. And as you can see here, you need to install this extra package for iOS. As I'm not on iOS right now, I'm not gonna do that, but if you are, you need to do it. And then, of course, as in most of the libraries, you need to run pod install. That's not my case here. So what I need to do for Android is, as the doc says, go to app source main Java. So let's do that. App source main Java. We need to go to the main application and import this. Okay, not right now, so let's add this import, and then let's add this in the get packages function, which is right here. So before the return, let's add this, and let's go to android/apps.build.gradle. Let's add this to the dependencies. Let's add it right here. And then android/settings.gradle. Let's do this. Okay, let's try to rebuild now. Okay, no errors. So what I'm gonna do now is create a folder called assets, and inside of it another folder called animations. So you can get a lot of different animations from the Lottie files website. So you just need to log in, and you can get a lot of free animations here. So all you need to do is choose, and it will give you a JSON. I already have here my animation, so let me just paste it here. I'm not gonna open it because it's a really large file. It might slow down the computer, but this is, as you can see here, a JSON. So now I'm gonna go back to my post. We'll have a function called like touch handler to handle whenever the user touches the icon. And we'll have here a state called liked, so I can know when the post is liked. Okay, so whenever the user touches, I'm gonna first of all check if not liked. I'm gonna set liked as true, and I'll also need a function to handle image double tap. And for this I need a last post tap, which starts as null, and I'll get the exact moment when the user taps, and I'll store that to compare with the next step. So if between the taps there is a delay of 300 milliseconds or less, I'll consider it to be a double tap. So let's get now as date.now. Oops. And let's call it double tap delay. Say it's 300. So if last post tap and now minus last post tap is less than double tap delay, so we will call our like touch handler, and else we just say last post tap is now. Okay, so in order for this to work, we need to have a pressable. So let's wrap our image with a pressable, and whenever the users click the pressable, will trigger the handle image double tap function. So now we have our like touch handler and our handle image double tap, but we don't have a animation just yet, so let's work on that. So in our styles we'll have something called like animation. Let's call this styled, and let's import something called Lottie view from Lottie. Okay, and we also need to import that JSON file, which is our animation. So let's call it hard animation from /assets animations hard.json. Okay, and again let's use our attributes. So let's say the source is hard animation. It is kind of like an image. So let's say its position will be absolute. Now we need to make our image wrapper position relative. Let me see what's going on here. Okay, so I just rebuilt the app. Now I'm going to import the like animation here, and now we need another state. Let's call it show animation. Okay, so we'll just check here. if show animation, then we need to return our like animation. And let's set some props here. Let's say it is autoplay, so it will start automatically. Loop is false, so we just want it to be executed once. Its duration will be 1.5 seconds, and on animation finish, let's call a function and set show animation false. Okay, so let's test it. Okay, of course this is not gonna work just yet. We need to set show animation true here. Okay, let me just clean up the cache. Oh, of course, I need to move this here. So this is not working. Let's see if this is triggering here. Okay, so the pressable is not working. Let's see what's going on. Oh, of course, I mistyped here. Of course, this needs to be on press. We're not on the web. Okay, so we can see our animation. It's pretty cool. Okay, we can remove this now. And now we need to set this animation whenever we click the heart icon. It's not working yet, so let's work on that. So first of all, we need to pass our like touch handler as a prop to our post footer, and in here we need to get it, and whenever a user presses the icon, I'll just call it here. And another thing I need here is to move the likes quantity to a state. Another thing I need to pass here is the liked state, so I can know whenever my post was liked. In this way I can just change the colors like so. If liked, else it will be just white. We'll get the liked from here. So let's see. Okay. Oh, but this is, I just inverted the order. This will go here. Okay. Okay. The last thing I need to do is to increase the amount of likes, and for that I need to create yet another state, which I'm gonna call likes quantity. and I'm gonna initialize it with likes, which comes from posts, and then I need to pass it all the way to my footer. And in here, whenever the user presses this, I'm just gonna say this is likes quantity plus 1. So let me just refresh it. So now if I press the heart button, it triggers the like. If I double tap the image, it triggers the like. And as you can see, we're not changing the number yet. Let's do this now. Okay, so we don't need the likes here anymore. Okay, so I'm passing this down. I have my likes quantity here. So let me just refresh the list, and whenever the function triggers, it increases the quantity of likes, as you can see here. So I can click the icon or just double tap the image and it works. So this is it. As you can see here, we added a lot of cool functionalities to our application. We have the infinite scrolling list, so as long as we keep scrolling, it will load more items. We have the double tap image, the animation. There are still some things we can do here regarding the performance of the list. We might do this in another video maybe. So that's basically it. I think the ending result is pretty cool and I hope you enjoy it. If you liked it, just give it a thumbs up, leave it a comment, and thank you.